Okay, for the next topic, we are on topic 5, all about uh, audit conclusion and reporting. Okay, now the important standards here will be ISA 700, ISA 701, ISA 705, and ISA 706. Other standards that you will see here is will usually be supporting. Okay, like communication with those charged with governance and materiality, written representations. Okay, so this will be the important ISAs here: 700, 705, 706. Okay, and 701. I forgot to include them. Okay, so as we know and discussed in our topic 1, the assurance, okay, or report related to assurance engagement will be for audit. Okay, so our focus will be on general purpose financial statements, and that our opinion will be focusing on. Okay, so who will be our so-called user of the information? Okay, so to whom shall we reporting to? Okay, normally we need to report to members or shareholders. In Papua New Guinea, we are commonly using shareholders. Okay, in other countries they call it members. Okay, we also have responsibility in reporting to the entity, which is the company itself or the client, and regulatory bodies, which means your report will be read by regulatory bodies. Okay, so for example, if you're auditing a company, IPA will be reading your report, and at times IRC. And if you're reporting a company which is regulated, for example, banks, okay, so that will be read by BPNG. Okay, so it is important for you as an auditor to be mindful that your report will be read by someone. So if you need to be like practice good care or due diligence in your work because someone will relying on your report. Okay, so it's really quite embarrassing if you are providing a report which is based on creation of mind. Okay, so which means there should be evidence on your report. Am I clear on saying that? Okay.
If the entity is not complying with regulation,
And it not complying with.
it's regulation. I have seen applicant legal check.
Okay, so we'll talk about tax compliance. So normally, if IRC had discovered that you're not complying with tax regulation, okay, so they will appoint an auditor, but that will be paid by your client. All right. So because you as a client or as a company, if you are the one appointing the auditor, there might be some bias on that because like anyway you're the one who will be paying, right? But you might be able to select so-called friendly auditors, okay? Because you're under investigation of IRC. So normally IRC will be the one to select an auditor and then send to your company. Okay, so that's how it works. Okay, so for example, even in university, IBS is subject for those accreditation thing. So we are not the one selecting the accreditors or the auditors. DHERS will be the one selecting. Why? Because if we are given the chance, what do you think we will do? We will invite not so friendly guys. We want to really determine ourselves. Let's invite those who really hate us. Will that work? No. So to make it fair, the regulators will be the one to send the auditors or select the auditors. Okay, clear? Right. Sort of things. Okay, but good question. Okay? At least you're refreshed on tax regulation. So in most countries, you need to report to shareholders. It's pretty obvious. Here in Papua New Guinea, we're doing it. Okay. But I'll just want to mention it, and I think you discussed this in your company law discussion. Okay? Initially, the one who will contact you is not the or the one who will appoint you as an auditor. Okay, normally it should be done by shareholders in AGM. Okay, in annual general meeting it will be okay. We would like to appoint PwC as our auditor, and it will be signed and voted for and pass a resolution. That's a normal process. Sorry, that is the ideal process. But initially, board of directors will be the one to contact you. Why? Because there is no in practice the audit may come into a surprise. Sometimes a company thought that they are not required to be audited, they will not request for audit. Okay? Why? Because you need to pay for the audit. Do you want to pay for something that is not required? I will. I will pay for school uniform. Okay. Is it required? No, but I will pay for school uniform. I want to spend my money. I've got lots of money here. You see, it's like padded thing. Okay. Will that work? I'm asking you in practice. If it is not required, will you waste your resources or money? Yes. You will. It's not required. You will. Then person is looking. Really? Not okay. I have another question to you. If a non-accessible quiz is not required for you to attend, will you attend? Let's be honest. No. Okay, I've seen you cannot deny this. Okay, only 10% of the students attending this class attended that non-accessible quiz. So we know that it's pretty obvious. Psychology, yeah. Okay, so and then the regulator will surprise the board of directors. You are required to be audited. So now they cannot call all the shareholders, right? It's really quite difficult to call all of them and have an a special general meeting. Sorry, special meeting. So the board of directors will decide quickly. Clear in practice, they need to decide quickly because the regulators will push them, and then they don't have time to call all the shareholders and cast the vote. Clear and pass the resolution. But the second year audit, before that audit comes, you need to submit that to the shareholders, pass that or we call it ratify your decision in annual general meeting, which means you will say in the board of the in shareholders meeting, and the chairman of the board will explain. We are really sorry. We are being pressured by the regulator. We need to contact an auditor quickly. Please ratify our action. Then they have to pass the resolution. Okay, clear? That is in practice. Understood? Except if you have luxury of calling all the shareholders, maybe only 5 shareholders, then that's fine. Call 5 of them and then decide. Okay? But for big companies, it may not be easy. Okay? Alright, so in some countries it will be like this. Okay, so you need to also report to regulatory body. Here in Papua New Guinea, we're reporting at IPA. Okay, so that's the regulatory body for companies, IPA. In some countries like in US, they have public company accounting oversight board. Why these guys are naming companies? Sorry, regulators. Anyway, okay. You see in UK, FRC or Finance Reporting Council. In Singapore, they have Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority. Okay, clear? So as an auditor, you need to know the regulators. Okay. Of course, here we need to report to IPA as mentioned a while ago. All right. So now we have to distinguish again, reporting to be made to corporate governance. Okay, so we have to distinguish those charged with governance, that is the governing body. That will also include audit committee and other committees overseeing the function of the management. Okay, normally, if your company is not really big enough, okay, you will have what we call unitary board, okay, which means you only have one board. If, for example, like BSP, they have a large functioning board, they have one level, like a supreme board, and then committees. The committees are really specialized. Okay, like for example, audit committee will be focusing on, of course, internal and external audit and how it works, okay, and how it supports the goal of the company. They can also create like risk committee focusing on unexpected situations and how the company is able to act on it. They can also create so many committees like human capital committees or something. The main goal there is, yes, as an auditor, you need to know the structure too, where you are reporting. Okay. So if there is an audit committee, most likely you will work directly with them, audit committee. Okay. But if there is no what we call those subcommittees, you will report directly to the board. Okay. Now, when you say management, that will be of course the executives working and doing the operation, day-to-day operation. Right. Now, in communicating with audit committee, we have to have that good relationship with them as an auditor because they are directly reporting to the board. Audit committee normally will be composed of independent individuals. Okay, and it's a good practice to have the chair of that committee to be a financial expert. Why? Because audit committee primarily will be focusing on finances. So we need or we need that audit committee to be headed by a person who has knowledge of finances. Now take note. CPA designation is a good way to determine if the person has a financial expertise, but not exclusive. What am I trying to say on that message? Okay. Sometimes we just have the default. Okay, it should be that person should be a CPA. No, there are so many finance specialists out there. Okay. Okay, CFA, certified financial analyst. Can we place that as part of the as the chair of the audit committee? Answer yes, because in good governance, anyone who has the financial expertise can lead that audit committee. It only happens that CPA designation is a popular one. Clear? Can we put a CMA person also? Yes. Can we put a CIA designation also or certified internal auditor? Yes. Clear? So it's important for that audit committee to have that expert in finances. Right? Right. So just simple as straightforward. Again, you will work with audit committee in any audit matters. Okay, directly to them. And the internal auditors will normally be reporting if they have audit committee. Internal auditors will be reporting directly to audit committee. If there is no audit committee, internal auditors will be reporting directly to the board of directors. Clear? All right. Now, management letter, when we are finalizing a report, we can provide our observation. Aside from audit opinion, we can send what we call management letter, which will include some observation that we had experienced in the audit. Okay. It's usual as an auditor, you will include in management letter those issues on internal control. You will say, as per our observation, these are the controls that may not be able to prevent material misstatements. It's a normal way in management letter. But I want the future auditors to be like this. Okay, don't only focus on weaknesses. Appreciate your client's control also if it is working properly. Okay, that I've seen some reports, management reports that I really don't like. Okay, why? Because they're only focusing on issues. No, if you keep doing that practice, only focusing on mistakes or errors, then your client will say, "Thank you very much. You're finding out our weaknesses and our issues. But are we doing the right thing, or at least in some certain area, or what?" Okay, it's not really a good practice wherein you're only pointing out mistakes. So that's why I have seen some report. What they are doing in management letter is that they have the commendation part, which means they're saying this is strong. Okay, keep doing that. Okay, we appreciate this control. And then recommendation. Recommendation means you will include those improvements on controls. Another thing. And the recommended improvements. Now, if you have seen poor controls, okay, happening in your client, you must have, and this is the one of the sickness of some auditors, they will only criticize, they will not provide recommendation. Huh? Wait. So in management letter, it's not enough for us to just say it's not really working well. You have to say how to improve that. Clear? Mr. Milford is really poor on time management. Tell me how to improve on. Maybe I'm talking too much, okay, during the class and dialing so many stores or things like that. Okay, but if you criticize, you must provide recommendation. Clear? No point of criticizing things that you don't have any. Same thing I'm telling my colleagues. If a situation doesn't have any solution, it's not a problem. Is it a problem? Problem tends to have what? Solution. So if a situation doesn't have a solution, it's not a problem. True? Unless you found a solution, then that's a problem. Right? Okay. Good. Sometimes you just no solution, so leave it. Why? Cognitive decision making. Huh? If you keep on thinking on something that there is no solution, it will just occupy your mind thinking about it, and you will not be able to think of other things. So if I say due date is on Friday, if there is no solution on that, don't think of no, just take it. Yeah, no solution. Because again, your decision making will be what? Will be occupied by that situation. Same thing in whenever you want to buy something. Shall I buy it? Shall I buy it? Shall I buy it? For the past 2 weeks, you're thinking of buying it. Shall I buy it? Shall I buy it? You buy it. It's occupying your decision-making mind. Huh? Anyway, you want to buy it. Why you just shall I buy it? Shall I buy it? Okay. Practical. All right. So let's go back to the discussion. We have types of audit opinion. We have two major classifications. Now take note. In some literatures, this unqualified with emphasis of matter is placed here and modified. But in others, they put it here. Now, let's just settle it, okay? Unmodified, we will have unqualified, which means clean opinion, and the one with emphasis matter. And then those modified will be classified into three. Okay, we'll stick on this, huh? Okay. Wait. All right. So I thought I never included those discussions. All right. So ISA 700 will be focusing primarily on an opinion, which is what we call standard. Okay. Did I mention about why it was called unmodified? Did I mention it before? No. Okay. If you look into ISA 700, that ISA 700 will have like we call template. What you will do is just copy it, change the name of the company and the dates, and the names and these things, and you're good to go. What does it mean? It's a standard report. That's why we call it unmodified. You not necessarily need to change those wordings there. It's just copy, paste, and that's it. Okay? Just change those, of course, name of the company, put your name, okay, and the dates. Okay, clear? Now, the reason why they call it modified is because you are changing certain paragraphs, including certain information there. Okay, and that's why you are changing it. That's why they call it modified. Okay, clear? Because I have certain experiences in some of the students whenever they're answering exam. If you say which report is considered as clean opinion, then they will select qualified opinion, which is part of the modified opinion. I know you. Okay, so this is the usual problem, and I asked the students why they keep on saying qualified, qualified is clean opinion, because we're talking about qualification, right? Like your degree, you're qualified, so which means you have the like clear, you achieve this, and then you're okay. You're qualified. Okay, clear on that. And I've seen in some social media posts whenever, let's say, an entity says the company received unqualified opinion. Then the guys in social media will say, unqualified opinion, this company is corrupt or something. No, unqualified opinion is the unmodified one, which means that's clean. Clear? Qualified opinion is different, which is under ISA 700. You need to modify it. Okay, so I mentioned so much on modified report. Okay, it says here, this will be the things that you will see, okay, in unmodified report. Okay, sufficient appropriate evidence has been obtained in accordance with, they will say like this, any uncorrected misstatements are material, uh, either individually, aggregate, or in accordance with ISA 450. So they will consider this in their conclusion. Anyway, the wordings that you will see at the opinion page will be two things. One is they will say that the company complied with accounting standards. And the second one is the presentation is made true and fair. Okay? That's the concept I think your lecturer had told you so many times. True and fair presentation. Now, in modified opinion, we have different instances why you are or modifying the report. Either you have disagreement with governance, which means you're trying to tell the governance to change or adjust the report, but they don't want to. Clear, huh? Clear on that? Okay. Second is that you are, as an auditor, prevented on obtaining evidences. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Okay. And it depends on magnitude. Later we discuss about that. For example, if we are trying to have a conversation or an interview with the CFO, which is a key position in finance, Chief Financial Officer or Finance Officer, then you told the CEO, Mr. CEO or Miss CEO, we would like to discuss something with the CFO. And then the CEO said, let me think about it. No? Okay. So you've been told not to do interview with CFO. Now, question is why? As an auditor, of course, you have the reason why you want to interview the CFO, right? Probably major transactions engaged by or executed by the CEO, which may not be aligned with the company's goal. Clear? Because normally CEO has the power to decide within the company, right? That's why we call it Chief Executive Officer. He can execute, okay, the mandate given to him, or sometimes those things that not given to him. So, is there any suspicious thing that you're thinking why CEO is not asking you to interview CFO? What do you think? Leave it up. You take the CEO. No, we're just kidding. We're just trying to. We'll just test whether you will say yes or no. Normally, and you should be allowed to have an interview or even constant engagement with the CFO. Why? Because they're involved in the money. And if the CEO is stopping you in doing that, there might be a problem. You can actually escalate this issue and then mention it to the board of directors. Guys, we want to interview the CFO with regards to this particular major transaction that may affect your financial statements. We've been prevented by the CEO. Clear? Okay. So am I clear on two things? Sorry, the disagreement part, it may be primarily on the financial statements, misstatements. Okay. Okay, let's look into qualified opinion. In qualified opinion, it says here, after obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence, they concluded that uncorrected misstatements, either individually or aggregate, are material but not pervasive. Okay. to the financial statement, or if unable to obtain sufficient audit evidence, okay, that the possible effects undetected misstatements on financial statements are potentially material but not pervasive. Okay, this pervasive part I will discuss thoroughly later. Huh? So, which means if there is a material misstatements in the financial report or financial statements, and that of course will affect the presentation, huh? You can issue qualified opinion. Or if the evidence that you want to obtain will also be affecting certain portion of the financial statements, and you are prevented in obtaining that, then you can issue qualified opinion. Take note, it says, but not pervasive. Later I'll explain that pervasive. Okay, I'll discuss two other opinions. Adverse opinion is there is a material misstatement, okay, and pervasive. Okay, take note of these words, pervasive. Later we'll discuss about pervasive. Similar with qualified opinion, the only difference will be that pervasive part. Okay, while disclaimer of opinion is where you are unable to obtain audit evidence or evidences that you are required to have. And those evidences will have an implication on the financial statement, material and pervasive. Okay. For further information about that, how it works, you can see ISA 705, Appendix A1. Okay. So you can see this table also there. Same table. Okay. Okay, so first one that will make your report modified is disagreement between auditor and the management and even governance. Okay, with regards to how they use accounting policies, methods of accounting policies that they applied, and the appropriateness and adequacy of disclosure. So these are the reasons. Okay, why you may modify your report. In the second one is inability to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Circumstances beyond the control of the entity. It may happen that the problem is it's not under their control. Okay, like for example, when COVID hits and you're trying to obtain evidence on a particular warehouse, it's not entity's fault. Okay? They cannot allow you to go there because if they allow you, they will be sued by the government. You got it, huh? So it's beyond their control. The second one that will or may have implication on your collection of evidences will be nature of or timing of the auditor's work. Okay, so you're asked by your client, please, we need audited opinion. Okay, then you've been hired, let us say 27 February, and then you ask when you will need it. Tomorrow, 28 February. Okay, tax season. Is it possible for you to collect the information that you will need to audit the financial statements? No. So you can issue disclaimer of opinion. Okay, clear? Another one is limitation imposed by management. Okay, which means the management is saying no. Don't go there. Okay. If you go there, it's dangerous. Like this, so many reasons. If you don't exert it, you will get tired. So just stay here. Stay in the air-conditioned room and we'll bring you coffee, sandwiches, or something. Okay. So the management is the one preventing you on doing your work. Okay, so clear? Now, what is that emphasis of matter paragraph? It's still fine. So the financial statement is still okay. Complies with accounting standard in these things, huh? And you obtain enough evidences for you to conclude on something. So everything is fine. Normally, the emphasis of matter paragraph will appear only if you want to emphasize on something, or you want to put the focus of your client's review of the opinion on a particular paragraph. And it is common to use emphasis of matter paragraph if there are issues on going concern, which means the company may be in a position where the continuity is questioned, okay? The operation is questioned. This portion I will discuss thoroughly on topic 8. Okay, so I'll leave it for now. Okay. Now let's talk about that materiality and pervasiveness. Okay, because that makes a difference between adverse and qualified opinion and disclaimer, right? Now, material, it depends on your materiality level that you set. Am I clear? 10%, 5%, these things. Okay? So I will not really discuss about materialities. It's straightforward. Huh? You can decide that materiality. Pervasiveness is different. Now, pervasiveness, either it happens uh, and it cannot be prevented. So which means it's continually happening. It's really cannot be prevented. So which means it's really the error or mistake or misstatement is really strong that even the like controls are unable to stop it. Okay. Another one. We can also talk about the magnitude of that error. Okay. If the error or misstatement affecting majority of the accounts, take note I'm talking about majority of the accounts, then that error, mistake, or misstatement is pervasive. Because when you talk about materiality, it's only like certain portion of the report, maybe 1 or 2 accounts. Pervasiveness is talking about maybe 10 out of 11 accounts are affected. So that is actually a pervasive. So if you talk about the difference between materiality and pervasiveness, materiality is you are the one to set it, and you feel that that effect is above that materiality level that you set. Pervasiveness is how much it can affect the full financial statements. I'll give you an example. Uh, let's say your client's warehouse got burned, okay, and all the accounting records were there for past 3 months. Will that past 3 months affecting the whole year's report? Missing report, huh? All those even the backup data had got crashed and burned, and these things. Do you think that 3 months missing information is pervasive or will affect or will be a huge effect on the financial statements? Yes or no? 3 months missing records. Yes? So it's not only material but also pervasive, which means it will affect the whole financial statement. You got it? Materiality can only affect 1, 2 accounts. Okay? That's the simplest way, okay? In practice, you are what? You are the one to judge whether that situation is material or material and pervasive. That's why as an auditor, you are in the field and you will be the one to judge. We can only give you some guidance as lecturers. Okay. Okay, so some key information on finalizing audit. So when you're auditing comparative information, we have 2 comparative information here: corresponding figures and comparative financial statements. Corresponding figures, comparative information where amounts and other disclosures for prior period are included as integral part of the current period financial statements. While comparative financial statement, of course, you have the 2 statements. The corresponding figures will be part of the financial report and has that, what do you call it, read only, okay, relation to the amounts and other disclosures, which means you are not supposed to change this corresponding figures. In comparative financial statement, you have the chance to change it if necessary. Okay, if necessary. Okay. What does it mean? When there's an error that affecting a prior year account or accounts which needed to be corrected, then you need to correct. That's under the comparative financial statement. But corresponding figure is what we call read only. You're not supposed to change it, which means it's fixed amount. So you're not supposed to, and it intend to only give you some information. Okay. I'll skip some. Okay. Now, what if, okay, you are auditing and it's common, okay, that your the audited financial statements, in your opinion, will be part of what we call annual report. Have you seen an annual report? I'm not really worried about that because you will do it in your assessment. Am I correct? You will be required to read an annual report. So in an annual report, what the company will do is it's like a prospectus, like information to the shareholders. So the annual report can include some financial highlights, okay, ratios, trends, based on the financial statement. Okay, clear, huh? Okay, so the company will provide these financial highlights. Okay, they will say for the past 10 years we have a growth. Okay, there will be a graph. Okay, everyone's favorite graph, bar chart, and these things. Okay, pie chart. Okay. Now, what is your role as an auditor? Because remember, the reader of the report will assume that these figures in those financial highlights are coming from audited financial statements, which you audited, right? Unless you just ask your client, I don't want to see your ledgers and journal, and I'll just sign. Okay? Don't do that. At least look into the financial statement, ledger, and journal. Okay? So, as an auditor, what is your at least some responsibilities on those information that will be referring to the financial statements or on annual report? Okay, let's give some examples here. So in your financial report, it will include, or the audited financial report, it will include a report by management or those charged with governance on operations, financial summaries or highlights, as I mentioned a while ago, employment data, planned capital expenditure, financial ratios, which will be based on financial statements, okay, nature of officers and directors, and selected periodic data. So your role as an auditor will be, you have to get some information about those other information that they included, okay, which will link to your to the audited financial statements. And if you found out that there is a material inconsistency identified when your client is referring to the audited financial statements, is the remedy. The auditor needs to determine whether the financial statements or other information that needs to be revised, which means you have to consider requesting your client to make their report consistent with the audited financial statements. Because anyway, they're saying based on the financial statements, the ratio is like this and like that. Clear? Again, if you're reading an annual report and then let us say the company is saying this is the financial highlight, you will assume that the financial highlight is based on audited FS. Clear? Now change the perspective. If you are the auditor, you know that the financial highlights will be based on the audited financial statements. So as an auditor, test whether the financial highlights ratios that they included are consistent with the audited financial report. If there is a material inconsistency, tell them, please, can you revise it? Alright? If it is considered necessary to revise audited FS prior to the date, take note that prior to the date of auditor's report. As long as you haven't signed the auditor's report, you can always push your client to change it. Clear, huh? So what does it mean? So when they're preparing their annual report, work together and then help them, okay, so this is the audit financial statement. If you wish for us to at least review your annual financial highlights, we can do that. Because anyway, the financial highlight will be based on the audited report. And then it says here, and management refuses to make the revision, the auditor should modify. Because you still have that power to do that. Okay, clear? Clear? So that's how powerful your audit opinion will be. After that, what the client will do? See you in September, October. The audit normally, okay, if the financial year ends 31st, normally it will end depending on the tax date. And the tax date, corporate tax date, and if your financial statements ending 31st December, will be 28 February. Got it, huh? Okay? So your audit may end that date or probably after maybe 15 days after that or 30 days. But it will be within first quarter. Your audit can start probably on November. Unless we have what we call retainer, okay, which means you have that constant or continuous relationship with them, and then you have like visiting quarterly just to do the preliminary audit, and then you will be having the full audit on November. Okay, depending on your agreement. Okay, I already discussed about subsequent events a while ago. Now, there is a concept what we call true and fair override. What is the true and fair override? Okay. Is it possible for a company not to follow one accounting standard? Yes or no? Because the framework is saying company under reporting classification needs to comply with full IFRS, right? Full IFRS. But is it possible for the company not to follow one accounting standard? Answer is yes. As long as the company will be able to justify what we call true and fair. Maybe adopting that standard does not really reflect the true performance of the client's operation. You got it, huh? And they need to skip that standard so that they can reflect the true and fair position of the company. Clear? But it's really quite difficult to justify that. Clear? As an auditor, you need to check whether the justification is true. We call it true and fair override. Clear? Possible? Yes. But needs to be justified. Okay? Okay, I'll skip this audited specialized area. The focus of audited specialized area is that you can audit only one portion of the whole set or the complete set of financial statement, which means maybe you're auditing only the balance sheet but not the income statement. Okay, it's possible. Okay, so your focus will be only, and you need to state that in the report that you're only auditing balance sheet. Okay. Okay, same here as I mentioned a while ago. So I'm skipping that because that's similar. Okay. Now, audit of summary. Okay, financial statement. Okay. You may be asked only to audit the highlights. Okay. Similar with the one that I mentioned about that specialized and auditing only particular section. Okay. So it says here, an entity may sometimes prepare the summary from audited financial statements. You are asked to do that. Okay. To inform users of the highlights, okay, of the financial position and performance, or provide them with financial information that believed to be more beneficial for their needs. The auditor should not accept, take note, such engagement unless they also have or will audit the financial statements from which the summary was derived. So, for example, you're employed in EY, and then PwC have done the audit, and then this particular client is asking, can you prepare highlights for us, financial highlights? So what you will do is, boss, you're currently engaged with PwC, so why don't you ask them? Anyway, they are the one who prepared the audited financial statement, right? Sorry, they are the one who audited your financial statement, so they will be in the best position to prepare it. It's more of like not really a legal perspective, but courtesy. Take note of courtesy, because you're giving that respect to your competitor. Okay, you're telling. Anyway, PwC is the one who have done that. So I've seen it as more of a courtesy rather than compliance. But it's compliance anyway. But it's stated, but don't do it. Okay. All right. Okay, auditors reporting on concise financial report. Okay, in Australia they are doing it. Listed entities in Australia can elect to prepare a concise financial report to send to their shareholders instead of full annual report. Okay, concise financial report are prepared in accordance with AASB. And in Papua New Guinea, we can also be guided on how they're doing it in Australia. Anyway, that's what we're doing. Okay, so we're getting best practices around the globe and then adopting it. Okay, we're talking about public sector audit. Public sector auditors carry out their responsibilities in accordance with an audit mandate, which is given by the parliament. Okay, the parliament will be the one to give that mandate, and the auditor general will be reporting to the parliament. Okay, so in Australia they call it Auditor General. Of course, here in Papua New Guinea we're calling the same. Okay, now INTOSAI, International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions, is a global organization for the state auditors. So I tried to search that website because when I was teaching audit in CPA, Papua New Guinea is not part of INTOSAI. So when I handle it now, I try to search that INTOSAI is Papua New Guinea a member of, or Auditor General in Papua New Guinea is a member of INTOSAI? The answer is yes. So Papua New Guinea Auditors General is a member of International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. Okay, just to update you, right? So then you will ask, so what? That's a good question. Okay, and the importance of affiliating in international organizations, same with IFRS, is that we have the chance to work with other jurisdictions and improve the audit practice. Clear, huh? So if you're a member of an international organization, you have that chance, okay, to meet, ask for best practices, what are their experiences, and then upgrade the audit practice in Papua New Guinea. Okay, clear? Same in Australia, same here, we call it Auditor General. Okay. So this is an Australian perspective, but also applicable in Papua New Guinea. So when the Auditor General report, they report and send it to Parliament. Same format. Okay. So the most important aspect of Auditor General report is the report to Parliament. This is a substantial report and usually provides a commentary on the operation and the financial result of the public sector entities, details of audit opinion reports issued during the period, and other matters, concerns, and interests in the Auditor General's discretion. Now, the state auditor is not only focusing on finances. I just want to clarify that one, and we'll have a separate session on that. I just want to include in our discussion that when it comes to Auditor General's report, not only finances, but also the effectiveness and efficiency of the government projects. Okay, there's a classic story, okay? So like okay. So someone had built the bridge. Okay. And then so effective, so the money is spent on the project approved. So financially that's correct. Got it, They build the bridge, but there is no river. Now you're scratching your head. Is it effective? No. Okay, so you remember, okay, just an example, okay? If you are the auditor, part of the Auditor General's work, boss, I'm really happy that you spent the money properly. Okay, I've seen you ordered in the approved suppliers and this, and you contracted and this, and then it went through the normal bidding process in this case. Can we visit the place? Boss, where's the river? Where's the river? No river. Okay. I got it. So in public sector audits, that's how it works. You don't only look into the money spent. The effectiveness, the efficiency of the project also is included. Okay, so we'll discuss about that in another discussion. Okay, audit recommendation in private sector. Of course, our duty, okay, as an auditor will be reporting to the members. Okay, and that's the reason why we send what we call management letter. Okay, but the auditor has no power, take note, to ensure that the audit recommendations are acted upon. In reports providing limited assurance, it's same thing with audit. Again, only lesser scope, timing, and extent of the audit. Okay. Okay, in review review engagement, most of the time the review engagement will be done either it will be done in what we call interim financial information, or you will be engaged by small or medium-sized enterprise because audit is much expensive than review. Anyway, the SMEs will only need someone to do some review of the report so that they can send it to other parties, maybe bank or some, unless bank is requiring audited FSI. Alright, so clear? Now, review engagement will be under ISRE 2410. Okay. And if you're engaged on that, you can actually do review of interim financial information. Normally, the one who will do the audit can also do the review. Okay, why? Because in audit, it's much comprehensive, okay, as I mentioned a while ago. But in review, you can do review of quarterly report. In practice, it's really helpful for you as an auditor if you are doing quarterly review. Okay, why? Because you already have certain information which will accumulate when you're doing annual audit. Got it, huh? So in practice, the annual review can be done also by the same auditor who's doing the audit. And I've seen it. Okay? If you go to the website of any companies, listed companies here in Papua New Guinea, you will see that there is an annual report. There will be a half-year review report. There's a section like that. Half year means, okay, so of course half year, right? So it's better in that way because if you're doing review, you're getting some information already. When you are doing the full audit, it's not difficult for you to collect those information because you already collected it. Probably you just have to increase some samples, okay? Okay, I'll skip this one because anyway I'll discuss this in one of the topics. Okay. Okay, last one. Okay, reports providing no assurance. Take note that limited assurance. I'm skipping because I've discussed it anyway in one of the topics. Okay, in detail. Okay, but reports on providing no assurance here, either you are asked to compile, which means bookkeeping. Okay, or you are asked to do a particular work which you will agree with your client, which means the client had already set some standards that they want to follow, and then you're asked, "This can you provide an assurance on this agreed upon engagement?" Okay. Take note, you cannot express any assurance on those. Why? You are only asked to compile, which means bookkeep, and also do a specific report which had been requested to you by the client. No assurance. Why? Because you're just getting their information and you cannot dig in on much detail on those transactions, right? So you can do that. Now the question is this. As an auditor, will you be allowed to do compilation and agreed upon engagement with your existing client? Yes or no? Compilation of the transaction that will reflect in the financial report. Okay. So as an auditor, will you be allowed to do or continue your audit if you will be engaged in compilation engagement? Answer no. Why? You already lost your what? Independence there. Because if you are the one compiling the report, you cannot audit your own work. Remember that self-review? Clear? You're the one who bookkeep, right? So you cannot review the information that you bookkeep or audit your own report because that will create conflict. So clear? Now, and this is now a good practice, and PwC is the one leading on this one. What they did is, instead of retaining one firm to engage in both assurance and non-assurance engagement, they separated it. And we are not yet having it here in Papua New Guinea, but in US, what they did is, they have assurance division separated, so which means a different firm, and then they have management and tax consultancy separated. Why? Because this will cater this, no assurance engagement. In that way, they are independent now because a separate audit or assurance firm or accounting firm doing the compilation and agreed upon procedures and even tax consultancy. But there is also a separate division or sorry, separate company or partners audit firm which will do the audit. Is that a good move by PwC? Now no one will question, hey, you can't audit your own work. No, because these are two separate firms. Clear? Good move by PwC. Now I think KPMG, EY, and Deloitte are following the same practice. In US they already did that, and I think in Europe also they are separating it gradually. Here in Papua New Guinea we don't have it yet. Okay, most likely it will come. Okay, maybe 3, 4 years, 5 years from now. Okay, compilation, as I mentioned, it's simply bookkeeping. Huh? Agreed upon, an assurance provider can undertake procedures of an assurance nature that are agreed upon with the entity. Okay, agreed upon procedure engagements are quite common in practice. Okay, they are designed to reflect individual circumstances of the client and needs and meet the needs of the user. Okay. Now, on reporting consideration, under ISRS or related services, or that RS is related services, okay, International Standards on Related Services 4400s, outlines that agreed upon procedures engagement, no opinion is expressed, as I mentioned. You cannot provide an assurance. Okay. The report issued by the assurance provider should outline the detail and in detail the procedures which they have conducted the agreed upon engagement. Okay. The report clearly communicates the users that agreed upon procedures were undertaken, not an audit or review. So in your statement, you will say, okay, we have conducted agreed upon engagement with client ABC. Okay, it is not an audit nor a review. You have to emphasize that one because remember, if someone is reading your report as an audit firm, they will assume that it's an audit. Am I clear? If PwC will provide a report on a company, what is the first assumption? It's an audit, right? So you have to clarify in the statement. Okay, normally you put it in bold so that it will be having that emphasis, saying that it's not an audit nor a review. So which means there is no assurance they provided. This will be the report that contains it, but you can always see it in ISRS for 44,000. Anyway, I will not go through it so much. And that's the end of the discussion.